Hey horror fans, welcome back to Room 237. This is John. Before I get to the film review, I just wanted to extend a very happy birthday to a few horror legends. Today is Sir Christopher Lee's and Vincent Price's birthday. Christopher Lee, this would have been his 97th. Vincent Price, this would have been his 108th. And yesterday was actually Peter Cushing's birthday. He would have been 106. Those guys are horror legends. I mean, especially from the 50s and 60s with the Hammer Productions era of horror. You know, Christopher Lee played Dracula a bunch of times. Peter Cushing played Baron Frankenstein and Van Helsing, I think 6 times as Baron Frankenstein and 5 times as Van Helsing. Vincent Price goes way beyond, way before that and even after that. Of course, a lot of people also know Peter Cushing for Star Wars films. You know, this is a horror channel, and I meant to say happy birthday to Peter Cushing yesterday, but figured just do it all in one video. I was going to do a separate video, but it's only been like not even a minute and a half so far. So happy birthday to 3 horror legends. I mean, those guys are like the Karloff, Lugosi, and Chaney of the 50s and 60s. And I don't think there's been a trio since. So happy birthday to those horror legends. But now moving on to the review at hand. It is yet another Italian film. One that I've been meaning to do for a long time, but it took me a while to get this movie. I used to own it. Then, I don't know what happened to it. Got it again. Rewatched it. And that is Dario Argento's Suspiria. Now, I've already done a number of Italian films, but I have not done any by Dario Argento yet. This is probably my favorite. I know a lot of people will say that. I think a lot of Argento fans will probably get mad at that because everyone says that Suspiria is their favorite. But this really is just a stunning movie. And the funny thing is, this movie isn't really known for its coherent, conventional narrative, like its story. It's more so known for its absolutely spectacular cinematography, its set design, its music. I mean, this movie's where it lacks in story, it makes up with in everything else. Very atmospheric, great music. I mean, you just get shots like this, like where just all these crazy light filters, and I don't know how well you can see this photo, probably not very, but I'll get into it regardless. So, Suspiria came out in 1977. This was sort of Argento's way of breaking out of the Giallo genre, which he didn't start, but his movies became prime examples of Giallos, like everything from Bird with the Crystal Plumage, Deep Red, Cat of Nine Tails, Four Flies on Grey Velvet. Those all became extreme examples of Giallo. This was his break away from that into the supernatural realm, and probably became his biggest and most successful film. And this is one of my favorite covers of horror. Just, you know, beautiful elegance and then just blood and gore. Simple, solid black cover. This is what a horror cover should look like. Anyway, the story is extremely simple. Jessica Harper plays a girl named Suzie. She's an American. She's a ballet student, and she gets accepted into this very prestigious dance school in Germany. And all this weird, spooky stuff is happening, and her and her friend Sarah are kind of trying to figure out why is all this stuff happening, why are people disappearing, why is all this crazy shit happening. And it's all just a slow, methodical build-up to a pretty chilling climax. Which, by this point, who am I spoiling it for? It's fucking witches. Yes, the remake came out last year. I have not seen it yet. At first, I was just like, why do we need a remake to Suspiria? Heard a lot of people hate it, but I've also heard the same amount of people that hate it also love it. Some people even like it more than this, because it's the polar opposite. That movie has a strong, interesting story with very simple a, a minimalist music and architecture and the cinematography and everything. But I still really like this movie. And this movie, every scene just grabs you. I mean, like the walls and the floors does so many things with like shapes, like squares and triangles, and it's almost like looking at a colorful optical illusion. They'll go from one room with like bright, vibrant to the next room will be blue, vibrant blue velvet walls, or gold or white, and just crazy shapes and colors all over the walls and the floors, and crazy architecture. That is this movie's strong point. And of course the music is done by Goblin with the collaboration. Goblin with the collaboration Dario Argento, which they've done scores for a lot of his movies. He produced Dawn of the Dead, so they did the music for Dawn of the Dead. I think they did the music for Phenomena. I think they did Tenebrae or Tenebrae. They've done a lot of his scores, and the score is phenomenal. We either get crazy synth music that you would hear in an Italian horror movie, or you'll just get this really eerie, ominous, almost like that part in The Shining when Wendy's running around the hotel. It's like that weird chanting. Sounds like that. But you also get very haunting images. I mean, in the first 10 minutes, you get like a vicious murder. Because this girl, Suzie, she arrives at the school, but they don't really know who she is, so they turn her away. This other girl is escaping from the school. She pretty much it's like one of those movies, someone figured out the secret, but then something happens to him, and then our main character goes through the whole thing, and we see their story. That girl escapes to a friend's house, and you know, there's all this weird stuff. She looks out a window, and we get this haunting images of just two yellow eyes. Complete darkness, two yellow eyes, which is frightening. And then an arm grabs her out the window. She gets stabbed a bunch of times. You see her open chest with a still beating heart. That gets stabbed. Falls through a stained glass window and then just gets hung. Other spooky scenes is, you know, Susie's brushing her hair. She finds maggots, and she looks up at the ceiling. There's maggots everywhere. Someone goes up to the attic, and whenever something crazy happens, the administration is always able to chalk it up to something. Like the maggots is spoiled food in the attic. And they do a good job at making these, like the dance instructor and like the heads of the school, be very like authoritative, but also something else is going on. You get a very young, early performance by Udo Kier, who's been in a shit ton of movies. If you've seen him, you know him. He plays a psychiatrist in this. And basically, it's just, all it is just slowly the girl Suzie figuring out that is witches. Her friend Sarah, you know, they figure out there's like this door on the left, but they hear footsteps go to the right. That's sort of the big clue that there's something else going on. And of course, Sarah gets killed in a vicious way, which that's another thing. Some stuff is right in your face. Other things are sort of if you catch it. Like when Sarah's walking around, she walks by like this little, sort of like a divot in the wall, like a museum would have, where there's like curtains, and you see the two yellow eyes in there, but it's in the background as she walks by it, so it's like things you gotta catch, which is scarier. And like this one part, it's like when Suzie first gets to the school, she's out in the hallway, and there's like this cook lady with this shiny thing, she flashes it at her, and there's like this young blonde boy who's really creepy looking. While that thing is flashing, he has this creepy smile. Then when it stops flashing, it goes away. But they're like off in the background. It's just little touches that Argento is great at. And of course, if people find things out about the school, or if they get fired from the school, they have to be dealt with. Like the organ player is blind. He leaves his service dog outside. Apparently the dog bites the young boy, so he gets fired. And there's this very long scene where he's like in this gigantic courtyard, which does a great job at having shadows and big widescreen. And just that crazy chanting music, and the dog just goes nuts and rips his throat out. Again, I'm kind of all over the place, but that's because this movie doesn't really have the strongest narrative. It doesn't have the strongest story. It's all just a build-up of spooky scenes until you figure out that it is witches. And it really is all just a build-up to the last 10 minutes or so, when Suzie decides to look into, she hears footsteps and she counts them, and that's how she knows how to go where the teachers are going. And I saw this back in high school, and I thought that end scene was very creepy, where she finds her way into the main witch's den, who is like this over 100-year-old sort of zombified witch. She's like sleeping, and there's like this veil over her bed, so you can just see her silhouette. But like when she comes across her room, you see the witch like sit up stiffly, and then like talk to her. And it's very eerie and creepy looking. And since it's an Italian film, it ends abruptly. When she kills the witch, everything just falls apart. The school catches on fire, and it just ends with her walking away. Then it zooms in on a window with flames, and then credits roll. Italian horror movies do just abruptly end. So yeah, kind of a shorter review, but the strongest points of this movie would be its music, its atmosphere. This was one of the final movies to be shot in Technicolor, and it doesn't let you forget it, because like everything is extremely fucking vibrant. The colors just pop right off the screen. It's almost like watching an acid trip. Like, you would think this movie was made in the 60s. Every room has like a different color that is extremely vibrant, and even the furniture is different, and crazy shaped mirrors or crazy shaped doors or crazy shaped windows. Like everything looks weird shapes and colors. It's extremely vibrant and sort of like an optical illusion. It's incredible, and that's what Argento I think is great at, is really catching like these great colors. Italian films are known for vibrant colors anyway. But, they, like, one room, like I said, extremely vibrant as fuck velvet walls. And then the next room is the same but blue. Like, the teacher's office or whatever is just completely white with, like, dark paintings of flowers. So, every room is just eye-popping when you see the different colors. And like that opening scene when the girl goes to the friend's house and gets killed. Just perfectly symmetrical rooms with squares and triangles and different shapes all over the walls. The stained glass windows she falls through. And when there are scary moments, they are very creepy and well done. A lot of people note that this is done at like a ballet school, but you really only get like one scene of actual ballet school. Other scenes where you see people dancing, it's because it's a precursor to something else. And yeah, there's not too much to say, but the visual and the musical aspects are really strong in this. And it's kind of funny that a movie with such a minimal story is so influential, and so many people love this movie. I love this movie. This is the first time I've seen it in years, so I was kind of trying to absorb it all. But then I realized there's not much to talk about, because this story is just a slow, methodical story of a girl figuring out all this spooky shit is building up to witches. And this is the a Synapse release, which they're releasing a lot of older horror movies now. Doesn't really have too much for features. Except you can choose the you know, the credits to either be Italian or English. But, you know, it's originally uncut, uncensored, Italian 35mm camera. So it's done. All they did was clean up the original film. But Suspiria, one of the best Italian horror films. Definitely one of the weirdest and trippiest, but again, it's kind of like watching a dream, a trippy ass dream or a nightmare. But Suspiria, sorry this review wasn't too in depth, but again, if the story's not there, there's not much to say. You can just talk about the visuals and the music, because that's what the strong point. But anyway, Suspiria, very good movie. I really enjoyed it. I think a lot of horror fans really love this. If you haven't seen it, you owe it to yourself. Check it out, even for the visual experience. Even that in itself is definitely worth it. Again, it's all, even though it is a build up to the last 10 minutes, you do get good scenes sprinkled throughout it. Suspiria is an absolute classic. Definitely check it out if you haven't. But that's what I got for that. So for room 237, thank you.